Hello and welcome to my show Conversation with Priya. I'm your host, Priya Mishra. And today is my guest, Sunil David. Sunil David has 27 years of experience in the IT and Telecom industry and is the regional director for AT&T India and is based in Chennai. He is responsible for building the IoT strategy for the India and the ASEAN region and working with various internal stakeholders to ensure successful execution. Working on building a robust partnership ecosystem for AT&T in the entire IoT value chain, device, platform, application, you name it, and also working on a number of marketing initiatives to help enhance the AT&T brand in the IoT space. Sunil has actually recognized by the World Marketing Congress in November 2017 as one of the 50 most influential digital marketing leader across India. So today, I would like to invite this wonderful man, Sunil David. Hi, Sunil. Thank you for joining in and welcome to my show, Conversation with Priya.
Thank you, Priya, for inviting me for the show. Pleasure to be part of this.
Thank you. And I know, thank you. Yeah, it's good to see you. Welcome back. And you actually passed through that COVID situation. You are a first-hand victim on it, but hopefully this going forward the journey will be fine for India and overall country. We can only pray and wish. So what I'm so sorry to hear, but yeah, now I'm so happy to see you here.
Thanks, Priya. Nice to be back. And fortunately, it was a very, very mild symptom that I got, so I recovered very quickly within a week.
Great.
So happy to be back again. Yeah.
Good. So what we are gonna ask you here, I know you have been contributing in lot, IoT platform for a long time. What would you say, how your journey started and how you achieve what you achieved today?
So yeah, this will take a long time for me to answer, but I'll try to make it as short as possible because I have to cover in 2 minutes my 27-year-old journey. So I started off my career way back in 1994 with a small company called Cygnus, and then I moved to the telecom sector actually in 1996 when I joined a company which was providing VSAT-based solutions, satellite-based communication solutions.
Sure.
And then in 2001 is when I joined AT&T. AT&T, as you know, is one of the world's largest telecom service providers.
Yeah.
Right. And so I had 2 stints with AT&T from 2001 to 2015 with the regional head of sales for part of the southern region. And AT&T predominantly sells only to the enterprise segment. They're not in the consumer segment in India.
Yeah.
AT&T provides telecom services to both enterprise and consumer only in the US, but outside of the US, it's completely enterprise focused. So 2015, around December, I left AT&T and I joined an Australian company called Telstra. I'm sure you'll know Telstra very well because it's your incumbent operator. So I worked with them for about a little over a year as the head of sales for India. And then in 2017 March, I had an opportunity to come back to AT&T to manage the IoT business. They needed someone to manage for India and ASEAN region. So I played that role until late last year. And then AT&T decided that they wanted, to focus on IoT only in US. And hence my role changed a bit. And so this year, even though I'm doing a little bit of my old role, which is to manage the IoT business, where we were trying to position our IoT capabilities to enterprise customers, trying to build our partner ecosystem, because IoT is all about an ecosystem. We need to have, the right partners in place. No one provider can do it all. Everyone has to come together and provide solutions.
Right.
And and then also on marketing initiatives, because in this part of the world, not many know that AT&T does IoT. So I have spoken at a number of forums. I've written articles on IoT. And then this year, I took up this responsibility of managing a small team, which is responsible to sell our entire suite of connectivity, collaboration, and cloud enablement services to customers in the West and North region. So that's my journey, Priya. In a wonderful journey so far, and especially my IoT experience. I'm going to share, during this conversation, all my experience that I've learned over the last 4.5, 5 years, dealing with a lot of our customers, working with startups, working with partners, and interesting examples of use cases where we have seen IoT being deployed. Yeah.
Yeah, and I was really impressed with your articles and all, which you have been. Your contribution is really amazing in this industry. Not many leaders from your background and the company, from the technology company, you will find the contribution you have done in this one. So that impressed
Thank
me
you.
a lot. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your contribution. I'm sure IoT industry has been very, valuing you in that, and that's where you are and why you are. IoT has been around for a long time, but it is only now we have started to see adoption pick up. Can you please, demystify that IoT, what IoT is, and what the various component of an IoT solution?
Sure, Priya. So before I actually demystify what IoT is, as you said, it's been around for a long time. In fact, the
Yeah.
first physical asset that was connected to the internet was way back in the 1980s, Priya. And you know what that was? That was a Coke vending machine that was connected to to the internet
Yes.
almost 30 years back. So you can say that it's old wine and new bottle, but there's been a significant adoption of IoT over the last few years, and this is only going to increase
Yeah.
for various reasons.
Yeah.
And I'll come to that. But coming to the various components of an IoT solution, or what is IoT? To put it very simply, you're trying to extract data from the physical world, and the
Yeah.
physical world as in anything which does not have compute and storage um, capabilities. So it could be a physical asset like a machine, it could be a car, it could be consumer appliances at home, any
Yeah.
physical asset. You're trying to extract data from that in terms of its attributes, its location, its condition.
Yeah. Yeah.
Once you extract data from the physical world, you're trying to add context to that data. And through the network, you send it to a cloud platform, which is
Yeah.
posted on the internet. And you process that data,
Mhm.
you analyze that data. And at the end of the day, you want to take decisions based on all the analysis that you've done of all that data, right?
Yeah.
So it's just trying to connect the physical world to a cloud platform, process data, and get the best insights, and based on which you take decisions. And the whole objective of implementing IoT is to drive better business outcomes, right? So a company would
Yeah.
implement IoT only if they see a real value from that, right? It could be to reduce your cost, improve your efficiencies, improve revenues, improve customer experience. So that essentially is what IoT is all about. Coming to the components very quickly, in the IoT world, you have a physical device, an IoT device
Yeah. Yeah.
that you need, which has sensors in it. There are different types of sensors. You have a temperature sensor, you have an accelerometer sensor, you have a gas sensor, a light sensor. But depending upon the use case, depending on the requirement, you can choose the type of sensors. You have a network module because you need a network to connect, right? So you could use satellite, you could use cellular, you could use Wi-Fi, right? So you need to have the network module, you need to have compute and storage capabilities in the IoT device. You package the device, try to get the cost of the device as low as possible, connect it to the physical asset, and from
Yeah.
there you're trying to get data. So the one component, very important component, is the IoT hardware. You got to engineer that hardware so that the cost of that is really low. And then the next important component is the network. There are various types of networks that are possible through which you can send data. You could use cellular, you could use satellite, Wi-Fi. There are so many options. And then you need a platform, because all this data that you're getting from the physical world, you need to store it in a place where you can aggregate the data, you can analyze the data, make sense of the data. So you have a platform, an
Right.
IoT platform, which is basically like a middleware, which is hosted on the cloud,
Mm-hmm.
store all the data, you visualize it, and then once you analyze the data, you can then move all the data or orchestrate the data to your enterprise applications, which could
Right.
be on a cloud, right? So to put it very simply, a platform is a middleware which will connect data from the physical world to your enterprise applications, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
so the components, devices, networks, your middleware, and of course your applications. These are essentially all the various components of an IoT solution, Priya.
Right. In very, very detail and insight. Thank you so much. But thing is that many people are confused what actually IoT is. So I thought it is very required to at least initiate from there. Like many entrepreneurs are there, and these days data is everything. You know,
Yep.
if you don't have the data, you don't know what actually consumer are expecting. You can't analyze the psychometrics, you can't analyze their behavior, you can't analyze their pain and gain ideas. So there it plays a big role. And IoT, I think it's contributing a lot in that sense to reaching out to and building your position. And all business owners should understand this aspect of it, I think. So I thought it was very important to bring that angle. So that brings to my next question. IoT has enabled different industries like manufacturing, retail, agriculture, etc., to achieve better business outcomes. Can you please share the economic impact of how IoT has helped these industries briefly?
Sure, Priya. So I'll give you the example of manufacturing. So if you just look at the manufacturing industry,
Yeah.
um, you can have use cases across various areas. So
Right.
you can kind of club use cases into three different buckets.
Mm-hmm.
So one is what happens within the factory or within the shop floor, where you have a lot of machines inside, you have robots inside, you have automated guided vehicles which carry parts inside the factory, you
Right.
have people working inside the factory, right? So in a manufacturing environment, you need to have that seamless integration between people, process, and technology.
Right.
Second is the supply chain, because any manufacturer depends on a lot of raw material and parts. So he needs all these parts or the raw materials coming into his factory at the right time, so that he can plan his production accordingly. So he needs to track his supply chain very closely, not just his main supplier, but the supplier might have other suppliers as well, right? So the tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 suppliers. So to track that, and then of course, once the finished good is made, to send the product out to the warehouse or to the end customer or the dealer, right? So supply chain, very important aspect where you need to completely use technology to digitize supply chain.
Yeah.
Third is connected products, because a lot of the manufacturers make products. For example, it could be a connected car, it could be any industrial appliance, it could be consumer appliances. So now we started to see a lot of technology being fused into these appliances. What was essentially dumb appliances today are smart and connected appliances, so that you can remotely monitor it, and you can extract data from it, and based on which you can actually improve customer experience. But one area which I just wanted to point out, because manufacturing itself, there are enough and more number of use cases, but one area where manufacturers really get to benefit is trying to do predictive maintenance of machines, because they have all these machines in the shop floor, there are a number of production lines. If one machine fails, then obviously it means loss of revenue for them, right? And especially if it's unplanned downtime, sometimes they might plan a downtime to do some maintenance, but sometimes there's unplanned downtime when the machine itself fails. And because they didn't have enough information about how that machine is behaving in the real world, they encounter that situation. So using IoT now and combining with AI, artificial intelligence, you can actually monitor the machine. You can have sensors attached to the machine, which constantly, monitors the health of that machine, its temperature, vibration, how it's performing, its efficiency, all that stuff. And once you constantly monitor the data, you are able to get enough data so that you can actually predict when that machine might fail. And when, you can actually predict an outcome that, okay, based on what I'm seeing about that machine, there is a possibility that maybe 2 months later it might fail because maybe there's too much of vibration happening. It could be various reasons. So there's a study which showed that because of unplanned downtime, manufacturers lose $50 billion every year. $50 billion.
Wow.
That's massive. Right?
So
if manufacturers are able to use IoT for a simple use case like monitoring of those machines and get to a stage where they can predict when those machines might fail or when the subsystems inside that machine might fail, that will go a long way in reducing their cost. And see the impact also, right? Because if you're reducing failures, that means that your machine is always operating efficiently at almost 100%, which means better revenues for the customer, right? So it has a direct bearing on revenues, Priya. So,
and also it impacts the other industry who is relying on that. So
exactly, yeah. So last year we've seen a lot of manufacturers, many of them who not even had started, monitoring the machines. They started to monitor the machines. We started to see a lot of adoption of manufacturers use, tech-enabled solutions to monitor people coming to the factories. Because of the COVID situation, people were working from home, but those roles which needed people to come to the floor, to the shop floor, you could have these thermal cameras or thermal guns which will measure the temperature. You don't have to have a person to doing that. So you'll have it at strategic places that will measure the temperature of people coming in, so that only those whose temperature is normal would be allowed inside. Anyone whose temperature is more than normal would be isolated, right? So we started to see solutions like that. to to measure temperature of people, maintaining social distancing. You want people 6 feet apart, right? So today you have solutions where you could have badges that are given to employees, and someone which Bluetooth enabled. So someone is less than 6 feet away from someone, it will vibrate. So that tells you that, hey, you're very close to that person, right? So there are all these solutions that are possible.
Yeah.
And in retail also, we started to see a lot of adoption of IoT, especially in the supply chain side, because supply chain was very badly disrupted. So they had to make sure that they have better visibility of the supply chain. So retail was an, healthcare used a lot of IoT. I'll come to that later. But agriculture also. Last year in India, agriculture was the only industry which grew compared to all the other industries. And this year we'll probably see a lot more adoption of IoT in agriculture to improve the yield of crops, to make sure that you use the right amount of water, because a lot of the crops are very water intensive. You need to use the right amount of fertilizers, pesticides, and eventually farmers should get the right price for their crop. Market access is required. So again, you can leverage the power of data for that. So enough and more number of use cases when it comes to use of IoT in agriculture up here.
Yeah, I was talking recently someone, and they are actually embracing very well IoT platform for agriculture industry, and they are trying to help the rural people and including youth in it. So it was very interesting case study I have discussed recently in another YouTube videos which is already posted. Very interesting angle coming in that, and the growth market growth is actually remarkably noticeable. How people have actually adopted the new technology and how people had reached out to the new growth, new heights, and of course it actually impact the whole economical zone, and people's earning and everything from retail to consumer, all level actually it is helping, and especially because of the data understanding, and as you mentioned, the people awareness of having the pre-planned scenarios, and supply chain also less disruptive compared to the previous decades. Did you notice like people are actually more promising, and they are able to capture that promise because they are able to achieve due to what IoT is offering. That brings to my another angle I want to ask. While enterprise and industry to understand the positive impact IoT can have on their business, can you please share what are the challenges that enterprises encounters when it comes to IoT deployment?
Yeah, so the problems are not related to technology, Priya. It is more related to issues around, kind of a leadership. You need to have firstly, you need to have leaders who are digitally savvy and who can understand the benefits of technology. Okay, because it all starts at the CXO level, because you can only go and sell IoT and any of these digital transformation solutions to the top CXOs, because you need a top-down approach there, right? Unless they are convinced, it will be very difficult for them to get the other stakeholders convinced about the benefits of IoT.
Right.
So one is, there could be leaders who may not be savvy or who may not be inclined to implement digital. You also have the issue of digital culture, because it's just not enough for the CXOs to understand the benefits of digital. All other stakeholders within the organization should also understand the benefits, and everybody has to be aligned to the digital vision of the company. Once you have a digital vision, all stakeholders have to align, whether it's your CIO, whether it's somebody who's a plant head, somebody who's a supply chain head, all have to come together. And the user has to accept the technology, because many times users don't accept a change. Change is always difficult for them. So they need to understand that by using digital, it's actually going to make their life better, right? So all of them have to, so that is another challenge, that culture is an issue. And there are other challenges also, like for example, they need a compelling ROI, because for them, at the end of the day, it has to result in some positive business outcome, right? So unless they have a compelling ROI, they are not willing to invest in that. Sometimes it's very difficult for them to understand that, in an IoT world, it takes maybe 12 months or more to see that return on investment, and many of them are not willing to wait for so long. Sometimes it can even take 2 years. So that's another challenge. People skills, they may not have people inside who have the right level of digital skills, to manage these projects. That again could be a problem. And there's also another challenge which I call pilot purgatory, which is even though they are convinced of the technology, they might start with a small proof of concept or a pilot just to see how it works. And once the pilot is successful, then they can move to full-scale production. They remain in pilot for a very, very long time, sometimes 1 year and more. So they call it pilot purgatory, right? So that is another challenge, so they just don't want to come out of the pilot mode. Because in IoT, the mantra is very simple, Priya. You start small, think big, scale fast, simple mantra. You have the big picture in mind, start very small, take one use case, see how the benefit is, scale that project, whatever savings that you get, you start implementing in other use cases. And then you really have to scale fast. Once you do that, then you really can see the benefit of IoT.
Right. And I mean, that brings to, you talked about that, how talents are not ready for adopting the changes and use cases they want to create, the pilot programs. And it's been actually a common phenomena, and it has been discussed for a long time in enterprise world, that every year you should have some talent pool and training concept, right? And majority of corporates, or especially medium-sized businesses, are not ready to implement that aspect. They know they need to do it, but they're not creating it. And that's why you must have seen the most of the employees, either they struggle themselves to pick up with the new adoption and new technology, or they are out of business very soon, right? Or if they are staying, if the company is kind enough to keep you, they struggle and the productivity is low. So there are a lot of other side effect happens just because people are not having a proper strategy for that training and preparing the pool for future, right? And you must have seen this very common, that most of the companies are not adopting to the training process, not making it mandatory, preparing your resource to getting ready for future, right? And that's where it becomes very important aspect of your success. So when we do, during our corporate strategy, when we discuss, we always bring that aspect. How are you been preparing your talent? Okay, you want to advance yourself, you want to go to the next level, you want to see a fast growth, but who is going to support that fast growth? Team.
People.
And you can't keep looking for new employee. They can be a human being, but they will not be your asset, because asset builds in time, right? It's like a gold and property. It's not your car which actually depreciate. It should not depreciate.
Absolutely. People is their biggest asset. You got to make sure that they are skilled. And this whole learning culture, because I think it's also the onus is upon the individual also to learn what is relevant and unlearn what is not relevant, right? And they need to be in that perpetual learning mode, because the technology is changing at such a fast pace. They have to keep up with that pace, right? So while you might have the thrust on the management for people to skill up, individuals also should realize that if they want to stay relevant, they also should skill themselves constantly.
And that is also another aspect of the talent pool, that they are not ready. Most of the time, I ran a survey recently, on 2,000 people, and I asked them how much time you spend after office hour to building your skill set, right? And you know what? The answer was, oh, I'm too busy. I have kids, I have family, I have this, I have that, but they do, like, hardly 3% people answered that they invest good amount of time, 1 hour, 2 hours, on their personal grooming or personal development, right? 3%, right?
Very less, very less.
Very less. So yes, there is a culture in the company has the lack, but it is an individual's responsibility, as you said, right? And it's a biggest challenge. And that's why when people call that argument about that, this AI is gonna take my job, and I say, so do we were talking about in 90s, we were talking about computer is gonna take our job, but we are still here. It's just that we upgraded ourselves, right?
Right. I think this whole paradigm is changing, Priya. That is, for people to now work with AI, with the machine, man and machine working together. Because see, any job has a number of tasks, right? So what is happening today is some of these tasks which are mundane, which are repetitive, those can be automated, right? And anything which involves creativity, where you need really good design thinking, critical thinking, those aspects become very, very important. So I think what is very important, whether you talk about an IT services company or a manufacturing organization where a man is working with a robot in the factory, this collaborative way of working with machine. That becomes very, very important going forward. That's the new paradigm now, Priya.
Yeah, and people should be in more acceptance to that, and they should be ready for that future, right? And I always claim automation is something like this. If you have to do it ever again, it means you need a system. And if you need a system, try how much you can automate, right?
Yeah, you must treat the system as your friend and not your foe. That's important.
Yeah. And the better system you will have, the employees, the resource pool, the people, all the stakeholders will be more comfortably working with you and adopting to your work culture. It has to be embedded in, we call it culturally conditioned situation, isn't it? So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
You have to create that culture. That brings to my next question. What are the major impact of IoT in the healthcare industry, and specifically how IoT is currently being used in the COVID-19 situation? I mean, I have to ask this question because this is our current scenario.
Right. So one thing which has clearly happened is the wearable market grew significantly. Smart wearables, like I myself wear a smart watch which constantly tracks my temperature, my heartbeat, blood pressure, etc. Right.
Yeah.
So the wearable market picked up a lot, and the smart wearables are nothing but sensors which are constantly checking your vitals, and you can send this information to a platform where doctors can analyze and see your vitals in real time. So the wearable market picked up big time. Telehealth increased significantly, Priya. Telehealth, because people were not wanting to go to hospitals and meet doctors. So we've seen a significant adoption of telehealth, telemedicine, because you're using your phone itself and doing a video call with the doctor, and your phone itself is like an IoT device, right? Because you have multiple sensors in your phone. You have an accelerometer, you have a gyroscope, you have a scan, you have a sensor which checks your fingerprint and authenticates you. You have a GPS inside, right? So your phone itself is an IoT device. So you're using your phone to consult the video through video. Then we also started to see robots being used in hospitals, especially during the COVID situation. Startups who came up with these robots because especially in hospitals which had severe cases of COVID, there might have been people may not wanting to interact very closely with those patients, but the robots were there which are IoT enabled, which were able to serve food to them, spray disinfectant. Some of these robots had video screens so that the patient can make a call with the doctor. That happened. Then ventilators, all these ventilators which are used for people who have breathing challenges.
Right.
Ventilators became IoT enabled. So you can remotely monitor the performance of the ventilator. So that again was another use case. And today, Priya, the biggest example which I would want to share is whole use of IoT in the monitoring of vaccine. Because the vaccines today, especially the ones in India, which are Covishield and Covaxin, they need to be maintained at a 2 to 8 degrees centigrade. Right. If it goes beyond the threshold, or if it is not within that range, the vaccine might lose its efficacy or its potency.
Right.
There are vaccines like Pfizer and Moderna, which has to be stored at minus 70 degrees. Right. So you need to have sensors which are very sensitive to measure the temperature. Right. So today, right from a vaccine being shipped through whatever means, it could be through the air or it could be through ship or even in road within a country. All these have to be in temperature controlled environments, and using IoT, you can constantly monitor that. Right. And once it reaches the airport, from the airport, it has to go to a distribution center, maybe to a public healthcare center. So you've got to monitor the whole supply chain, right? So you need to know exactly where the vehicle is, right? Again, IoT comes in there, right? So this whole vaccine supply chain, IoT is playing a huge part, Priya. So healthcare definitely has adopted IoT in a big way.
And we can see huge growth in it, and I'm see, it's surprisingly, it's a wonder, that we needed a pandemic to actually adopt that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I worked in IoT around 15 years ago, right? And it was very much into electronics manufacturing side. But I'm just saying the IoT has been there for many years now, right? It's not new. Just like people are now started talking about like voice search, you have to be optimized for that. And I'm saying Siri has been there for 10 years, right? So the very few are actually early adopters. And what I notice in entrepreneurial journey, it is very much important that you have to be adaptive to the new changes happening as fast you can, as otherwise
Yeah,
you might miss out many opportunity, and you will be wondering 7 years, 10 years down the line, what did I do and why didn't I adopt it at that time? You're gonna adopt sooner or later anyway, right? So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
I think risk analysis is crucial to know if I'm not adopting, what's gonna happen. Pros and cons has to be checked out. It's very, very crucial. I would like to ask you, if people wants to come to this IoT platform, or if they want to initiate their own business, what is your recommendation to the people, and what is the recommendation for the people, consumer aspects or entrepreneurial aspects?
so your question is, for an organization, if they want to embark on an IoT journey, how do
Yes.
they start? Is that your question?
Yes.
Is that the question?
Yes,
Right?
please. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay, so for an organization which wants to start their IoT journey, I think the first important thing is to figure out what problem you're trying to solve
Right.
within the organization. Identify what the problem is. There could be a number of problems, but you need to prioritize which is the most significant business problem that you're trying to solve.
Mm-hmm.
Once you understand what the problem is, you need to then figure out, with the budget, you need to obviously have a budget for it. You need to figure out what technology. So because IoT is very fragmented, there are a number of players in the
Yeah.
in the IoT space, device players, network providers, and all that. So you need to make sure you choose the right partners to make sure that you implement that. But the most important thing, Priya, is to come up with clear business metrics. Okay, I'm going to deploy IoT, but I must have a clear goal in mind, a clear
Yeah.
business goal in mind. By deploying IoT, I want to reduce my maintenance spend by 20% or 30%, right? I want to
Yeah.
improve efficiency by 30%. So you need to have clear KPIs, key performance indicators in mind when you start your IoT journey. Start with the business case, find out what the challenge is, key challenge, come up with the KPIs, that clear metrics. Then you get the right partners to implement the solution. And of course, it has to be top down, as I told you earlier. All of the stakeholders have to be involved, all have to be aligned towards the goal of achieving the objective. And then it's a journey always, right? It's never a destination, So you need to be on that journey constantly. Make sure that you come up with new use cases where you believe that IoT can solve those problems, right? So I think uh, in a nutshell, Priya, you first start with the business case, find out what the challenge is, and then you implement
Yeah.
IoT. Because many
And
of
know
them
your metric.
think that, yeah, because see, there are companies who might go into a conference, somebody will tell them that, hey, I've implemented IoT. That guy says that, okay, I'll also implement IoT in my company. But you really need to have a real solid business case, because there is investment involved. There are shareholders that you're answerable to find out how you are spending your capital, right? So you got to obviously ensure that you spend the amount appropriately. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, unless you can't strategize it, and there is more possibility to fail than succeed in that case if you're doing the random, and it happens a lot of time. People actually, I have noticed that people actually blame to the technology or something they adopted without a strategy, and they fail, and they say, oh, it doesn't work, but
Yeah, very
it is
common.
more often you will be listening, it doesn't work, and I'm saying, do you know why? The answer is very few people, like, you will be aware, like, they will be able to give you, right? So that is bringing to my last question: how AT&T can help people on the retail level, and do you help on the retail level, or just you help on the enterprise level and I know it is you are helping on enterprise level in India, but what about the other part of the world?
So we are not focused much on the consumer side. So US is our focus for IoT enterprise. A lot of big enterprises are using AT&T IoT solutions, and the one of our biggest strength is in providing connected car solutions. So more than 43 million connected cars are using AT&T global SIM for connectivity. So more than 30 auto OEMs use AT&T's connected car solution, which includes the global SIM. So while the automobile segment is a big focus for us, and that gives us a lot of revenues, on the consumer side, our focus is not much. But on the consumer side, if you look at most of the world, there are enough and more use cases, Priya, where consumers can look at adopting IoT in some way, right? For simple things like an air conditioner at home, today you have players who can make those air conditioners smart and connected, because air conditioners consume a lot of power.
Yeah.
And you can actually use IoT devices that can be integrated with the electronics of the AC to monitor its energy consumption, so that you don't spend too much of energy usage, right? So so you can actually monitor that remotely. You in case you have a situation where I mean, typical issues when you have when you have a problem with the air conditioner, you call your manufacturer, and sometimes it takes 2 days, 3 days, sometimes more to come and fix that problem for you, right? But what if you have a device that is plugged into the AC and the manufacturer is constantly monitoring the health? And even before you know that there's a problem, if the manufacturer calls and tells you that, hey, I see that there could be a potential problem with your air conditioner, I'm going to send a technician to fix it before it actually goes wrong. It takes customer experience to a new level, right? So it's all proactively trying to solve it, right? So I just gave the example of an air conditioner which can be smart and connected, but there are other appliances also that you can use. You can use a dishwasher which is connected. I know of an Indian company which is called Hindware, which is making kitchen chimneys smart and connected, water purifiers smart and connected, IoT enabled, water coolers which are smart and connected, right? Your lighting regulation of the intensity of light, that can be IoT enabled. You can choose the colors, intensity, all that stuff, right? So from a consumer standpoint, yes, adoption in India is very, very less. So hopefully it should pick up over time, Priya. So I just wanted in this context tell you that Global Data, it's a research and consulting firm. They did a study. They said that the total spend last year on IoT was about 2020 was about $622 billion.
Wow.
Of that, enterprise spend was 76% and consumer spend was 24%. So consumer adoption is still very, very low. And the prediction is that in terms of value, that will definitely grow in the future. So, we'll probably see a lot more adoption from a consumer standpoint going forward.
Right. And I'm pretty sure we can see the scope is there. We can see requirement is already there. It's just that people has to act on it. The technology is there.
They must see the value. They must see the value of implementing it, because it comes at a cost, right? Because the moment you IoT enabled an appliance, there's an extra cost that a consumer is going to pay. And unless the consumer sees that value, okay, by paying that extra cost, I'm going to get this value, they don't want to spend that money, right? So the onus is on the service providers who's selling the solution to sell them that value, saying that this is the value that you're going to get. And obviously means that,
And also, it is also very important that if you are not adopting to the change is happening, there are many companies who lost, they were actually leaders in their industry, and they lost it because they did not adopt it to the modern change,
Absolutely.
You can't avoid it. You have to adopt sooner or later. It's just a matter of how you are educating your consumer and how soon you are adopting to stay in the market and stay is still relevant,
Absolutely.
It's a cat 80-20. See, if you're not adopting, you're gonna lose anyway sooner or later that market. Kachua Chap and Martin scenario, Kodak scenario. You have plenty of case studies like that.
The average lifespan of companies in the S&P has come down. Earlier it was for 50, 60 years.
Right.
The lifespan of those companies have come down, by what? It's come to like 15, 20 years now, right? Because, and the one reason being that they haven't adopted technology or not adapted to the change. So many examples, Blockbuster, Toys R Us, so many of these examples in the US where companies just could not adapt to the change.
So it's very relevant to look into those angles as well. Thank you so much. I know AT&T doesn't need any, name and fame. The people, it's like everybody knows who, even people are not using it, they know it, the company name. But still, if somebody wants to reach you out, well, how can they reach you out?
So I'm active on social media. I'm very active on LinkedIn especially. So they can always connect with me on LinkedIn. I do tweet occasionally, so they can also connect with me on Twitter. But if anyone wants to reach out to me one-to-one, you can always share my email ID with anyone who comes and connect with you, Priya. So more than happy to reach out to people and share any of my learnings or experiences with them.
Thank you so much. And please, if you haven't liked, subscribe, and commented, please do that. Start following us. There are many stories we are bringing like this. And all the details of Sunil David will be actually given in the description. So you can reach out. You don't have to wonder and find out. If you want to reach out to us, the Corporality details are already there. Reach out to us and we will be happily connecting you with the Sunil. Thank you so much for joining in today, audience. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Priya, for inviting me. Pleasure being part of the show. Thank you.
Pleasure. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you liked it, like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already done it. To know more about us, visit www.corporality.global. And also you can find more about Priya Mishra is on priya.sydney.